Good morning. Good morning. Grace and peace. We launched last week a series of sermons on the life of Abraham entitled Wanderers and Wrestlers. And I don't know if you were here last week, but I said something last week. And what I said in last week's sermon was, like Abraham, who was called by God, God never calls anyone in that he does not send out. A Christian is somebody that's been called by God, but at the same time, somebody that's been sent out on mission. And I think this statement is true in the lives of Silver and Jenny. Let me invite them to come up here. Would you guys welcome Silver and Jenny up here? You know, I met Silver and Jenny, I think about 12 years ago. They started to attend. They had no kids. Now they have, he's kind of like Abraham, a father of many. But they had no children, and they started to attend our Brickell campus. And I knew their story a little bit, that they had moved from Brooklyn, New York to South Florida. They were living in Pembroke Pines at the time. I think he was here to head up a division of Chase Bank. And they got plugged in the life of our church right away. And the more I started to get to know them, the more I was impressed with this couple, because the conversations that I had with Silver and Jenny surrounded this topic of ministry and missions. Silver said to me in the very early days, I feel called by God to plant a church. Remember that? And I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know where it's going to happen. I feel called by God to plant a church. So several years later, we started a training program for church planters. And it was fueled by City to City. And Silver joined that program. It's a program to give tools to leaders so that they can start their churches. At the same time, also, we sponsored Silver to go through seminary. He started seminary at Knox Seminary. He concluded his theological studies and concluded the program at City to City, the incubator program. And there was an opportunity to plant a church in Hialeah. Remember that? And so what they did was they sold their house. No, did you sell your house in Pembroke Pines? No, he kept his house. It's going to come a full circle. Yeah. Kept his house in Pembroke Pines, bought a house in Hialeah, moved into Hialeah, and to start developing relationships with the community with the objective of planting a church there. A few months into it, we were starting Crossbridge Key Biscayne. And part of the last piece of the program is to intern at some church planting or as an apprentice. So I invited them to come to KB. And so they put the Hialeah project on hold for a season, came here to learn. So they were here on day one when we relaunched Crossbridge Church. At some point, I had a conversation with Silver, and he says, I feel called by God to stay here and give continuity to the work. So they moved to Key Biscayne. So from Hialeah, they sold the house and they moved to Key Biscayne. And Silver's been here with Jenny, I think now for 5 years. In the last year, he felt called by God to work with his brother in their restaurant business. So he stepped down from the campus pastor role here, where they have served and touched the lives of many. And it was in this season, right, Silver, that God called him back to ministry. Guess where? The Pembroke Pines. There's a church that's being rebirthed in Pembroke Pines, a small church, and God has called Silver and Jenny to go there and to replant and to revitalize that church. And so therefore, this is their last Sunday officially here with us at Crossbridge. It is a bittersweet moment. I love this couple. I have a lot of respect for them. They're both people of character that I've learned with and through the years. And our prayer here as Crossbridge, Key Biscayne, and Crossbridge in general, on behalf of all of Crossbridge guys, I just want to say we're going to miss you guys. Hopefully we can collaborate in the future and in different initiatives that God presents to us as He presents opportunities to us. But we're going to miss you guys. We're deeply going to miss you guys because we really do love you. And so we would like to pray for you. And so if you could extend your hand towards them so that we could pray for them. let's do that. It's a way to send them off and share God's blessings over their lives. Father, we're grateful for this couple and the impact that they've bore in this community and in the life of Crossbridge as well. They are friends. They are, family to us, and we're going to deeply miss them. And I think that I share the sentiments of the rest of the staff and also the rest of the congregation. And Father, I pray that as you send them out, as they go into this new adventure and this new quest to plant the gospel in that part of town where they first came from, Father, that you would use them, that they would impact the lives of many, and Father, that you would build a really healthy church through their ministry. Father, give them a solid and healthy marriage. Father, may they be able to shepherd and parent their kids in a godly way, Father. And I pray that you would prosper their work. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. After the service, don't leave. There's a reception that's been prepared for them. Nancy Gamwell, went through the great lengths of doing something for them. And so I encourage you to stay and hang out and celebrate with them this new season of life and reminisce on the days that they've spent here with us. Do you want to say anything? You guys want to say anything? If we can get a mic. Huh? You guys are welcome to say anything if you want.
From that stand right there.
Can this stand? All right, Julio.
Sorry, didn't plan for
I don't know which mic this is, but here, why don't you guys?
I just wanted to say thank you, Felipe, for that warm presentation and all the kind words. We're grateful for this church. This was like our boot camp. We were sent here first time of doing ministry, and we learned so much from you guys. One of the things that you worry as a man, as a father, is, man, how is the church going to take care of my wife and my kids? How are they going to welcome them? And I immediately realized that wasn't an issue here. You guys were so gracious and loving towards us. Sometimes we were a family of 5, sometimes we were a family of 8, sometimes we were a family of 6, and you guys always were willing to just love on us. So we're forever grateful. You'll be in our prayers. And yeah, we were excited and sad at the same time of the next season in our lives, but God is calling, and we just feel like we have to respond.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for every single one of you. I'm going to try not to cry. But I want to encourage you guys to continue the work that God has begun. And we welcome 8 children into our home thanks to you. And I pray that the ministry of loving our city and loving the orphans will not stop with us. So, yeah.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I wish we could do this not in the summer months so that there would be more people here. But nevertheless, we'll get to see them more, in the future, hopefully. Our passage today comes out of Genesis, and we find ourselves in chapter 13. We're going to read from verses 2 through 17. So if you have a Bible, you can read it along with us, or you can look at the passage on the screen. Now, Abraham was very rich in livestock and silver and in gold. Your name appears again here in the passage, silver. And he journeyed on from the Negeb as far as Bethel to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at first. And there Abraham called upon the name of the Lord. And Lot, who went with Abraham, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together. For their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abraham's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At the time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. Then Abraham said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left." And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zohar. So Lot chose for himself all of the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east Thus they separated from each other. Abraham settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. And the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all of the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offsprings forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. This is the word of the Lord. So Abraham follows the call of God to leave the comforts of his father's home in journeying towards the promises of God. And here he finally, obviously, arrives to the land. He actually returns to the land. He goes to Egypt and he comes back to the land. And now he has a decision, an important decision to make. It's a financial decision. It's a decision that involves his possessions and his wealth. And I think that the decision that Abraham makes here is a decision that informs us, especially in a season right now of troubled and tough economic times. So today we're going to talk about wealth. We're talking about real wealth and what real wealth looks like. So, but before that, I want us to talk about the truth of wealth. Then I want us to talk about the problem of wealth so that we can understand what real wealth looks like and how we can experience in our lives as well. So first, what is the truth about wealth? First, people think that it's a sin to be rich. It's not a sin to be rich. The text tells us in verses 2, 5, and 6 that Abraham was a very wealthy man, and so was Lot. He had a lot of resources, a lot of cattle, a lot of money, a lot of resources, and God was giving them a whole land. They were becoming even richer, which gives us the origin of wealth. Wealth is from God, okay? If there's nothing wrong about having money, I want to take you guys off the hook, here. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy. It's from God, and it's from the hands of God, and it's by grace. It's not based on reward. God doesn't look and he sees, oh, this person is better than that one, and therefore I am going to give them more wealth than that other person. I love this one more than that one. It's not based on anything that we can do. It is a product of the grace of God. I said earlier that Abraham returns to the land that God called him to go towards. He, in chapter 12, in the beginning of chapter 12, he gets to Canaan. Then there was a famine in Canaan. He goes out to Egypt because he doesn't trust the Lord to provide there. So he messes up. He goes down to Egypt. That's his first mistake. Then he makes a second mistake once he gets to Egypt. Because when he gets to Egypt, the text tells us that Sarai, his wife, was very pretty. And Pharaoh and the Egyptian leaders look at her and they start complimenting her beauty. And so they ask him, is this your wife? And because he's afraid of being killed, because back then you could just take somebody's wife and all you needed to do was kill the person, especially if you're Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world. He tells Pharaoh that that's actually his sister. And she is placed in Pharaoh's harem. And in return, he receives from Pharaoh a lot of wealth, even more cattle, even more gold, even more silver off of her. Until God begins to curse Pharaoh's household, and Pharaoh understands there's something here that I'm not seeing, and has a conversation with him and finds out that she's actually his wife. And Pharaoh's angry and sends him off. So he messes up big time. He gives his wife to another man. He lies. And yet, God still makes him wealthier. Why? Because God is gracious, not based on his performance. It's based on the grace and the mercy of God. That's important for, I think, Americans to understand, because many of us think that wealth is a byproduct of our good decisions and our hard work. And we do two things with that. We look at other people that are poor and we blame them for their decisions. That's why they're poor, because they're mooching off the system. They've made poor decisions in life. That's why they're poor. If they get themselves together, they will become wealthy. And it's not necessarily like that. There are people around the world, and even in this country, even in this city, that work as hard as you do, that have made good decisions in life, and they don't have a fraction of what you have, because what you have has been a gift from God. It's grace. It's the byproduct of grace. You have been graced by God. Okay? You did make decisions. You did work hard. But if God did not bless, you would not have what you have. It's by grace. So we need to understand this. We need to get this out of the way. It comes from God. In James chapter 1, verse 17, James says this. Look, this is what the Bible teaches. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. But it's the grace of God. And the reason why God graces us sometimes with wealth, and by the way, if you live here in America, you are the wealthiest of the world. You're part of the 2% in the world that has, the comforts and the access of money that you have. Okay, so you're already, regardless of what social class you're already part of a very privileged group. But why does God give us wealth? Why does God grace us with wealth? There's two reasons. First, delight. Okay, there's nothing wrong in enjoying the good things that God gives us. Nothing wrong with that. So if God gives you the ability to take certain trips to certain places, certain vacations, great, enjoy that. If God gives you the ability to buy a nice house, spacious house, great, do that. If God gives you the ability to buy a nice car, great, do that. If God gives you the ability to put your kids through good private schools, great, do that. But the ultimate reason is not just for your delight. There's a greater reason. And that goes back to the previous chapter, right? God says to Abraham, I'm going to call you out of your father's house. I'm going to bless you. And I'm going to bless you in every single way. But I'm going to bless you so, you remember? I'm going to bless you so that you would be a blessing to others. See, the reason why God graces us with resources, ultimately, it's not to use the resources that God gives us, or wealth, to control others like a lot of people do. There's a lot of families where the father's really rich and he controls people with money. He pours money over here and over there so that his way is accomplished. God does not give us wealth to control people. God does not give us wealth just merely for accumulations purposes, so that we could just have security, stacked up in banks or in vaults. He does not do it for those purposes. He does it so that we would facilitate the human condition. So let me go back. God gives us by his grace for grace's purpose, so that we can grace the lives of others. He blesses us in order to be a blessing. Whatever God has given you, whatever type of wealth, and let's think about wealth in a more comprehensive way. Whatever wealth God has given you, whether it's time, whether it's talents, whether it's treasures, God has given you so that you would be a blessing to others. Okay? How are you doing with that? That's the truth about wealth. Second point. Now, there's a problem. There's a problem with that. Now, let me share with you a story. I believe, before I share the story, let me preface by saying this. I believe that the reason why God does not give some of us wealth is because it can come to us as a curse and it would ruin us in the process. I was having dinner with a friend a week or so ago, and he was telling me that he left his corporate job several years ago because he was invited to broker this deal that if he had closed that deal, he would have made $40 million. So he devoted a lot of time and attention to brokering this deal between two businesses, two business groups. And he said they got to the last meeting. It was really close. And something that was said on one of the sides started to erode the trust between the partners, and they called off the deal, okay? He had worked 4 months into that deal. He thought he was going to get $40 million. He was already having his wife go to the Porsche dealership to pick her car, okay? He told me that over dinner. And he got so upset. He had to go back, knock on the doors of his corporation, see if they wanted him back. He ended up having to take a job elsewhere because they didn't take him back. But he was telling us over dinner, he says, if I had gotten that $40 million those 10 years ago, I would have ruined my life. I would not have delighted in the Lord and the things of the Lord, and I would not have been a blessing to others. And therefore, now I understand, okay? So here is the problem of wealth. Number one, an overrated view that we have of it. Here's what we think. We think that wealth is more than it actually is. We think that wealth gives us more than it actually gives. An example of that is wisdom, okay? Why is it that we think that people who have been successful in business, they are wise people and they can speak to any topic in anyone's life, all right? Some people believe that just because they became successful in their business, that they're successful in every area of life, that they can speak into people's marriages and relationship, and we listen to them when in reality they're as messed up as all of us in every single area of life. See, wealth does not deliver what you think it will deliver. We have an overrated view of wealth. And in this passage, there's the story. There's two wealthy men. There's Abraham and there's Lot. Abraham is wise, but Lot is wealthy, but he is dumb, okay? He is not a wise man. So just because you're wealthy, it doesn't mean that you're wise. Just because you're wealthy, it doesn't mean that you're happy. Just because you're wealthy, it doesn't mean that you're resourceful to others. Just because you are wealthy, it does not mean that you live life in a purposeful way, okay? So we have an overrated view of it. So what happens here in this story? A problem arises. What's the problem? Abraham and Lot, they're super wealthy, and they're in a region, they're in this land that if they stay together, they will cap each other's growth. And in fact, the herdsmen of both of them started a fight over land because they have a lot of cattle. I mean, they're too big for that small space. And so Abraham comes to Lot and he says, hey, why don't you choose? Look over the plains. And why don't you choose where you want to go? And the text tells us that Lot looked over the plain and he chose the most fertile area. Where they were looking from, 3,000 feet underneath from where they were the plains of Jordan, where you have today the Dead Sea. And Lot looked at that, and Lot made a financial decision. His decision was informed by profit, possibility of profit. He says, this area is dry, but down there, there's water, and that's where I can grow the most. That's why I can increase my wealth the most. So he makes that decision, which is informed by profit. But the text tells us in verse 10 something that's very interesting about that decision. It says that when he looked at the plains of the Jordan, he saw it as the garden of the Lord. Okay, I want you to understand this. He saw it as the garden of the Lord. You know what this is a reference of? This is a reference to the Garden of Eden, where humanity was created to flourish under God. You know, since humanity has been kicked out of garden, all of our lives we've been trying to return to that place, the place of Eden, because that's the place where we were created to exist, where we were created to flourish as human beings. So what does he do? He looks at that playing field, makes a decision based on profit, and he sees it as the garden of the Lord. He says, more than just, hey, I'm going to make money off of this. What he's saying is, I'm going to go to this place, I'm going to make money, and this is going to bring the satisfaction and enjoyment and significance that I look for, the satisfaction and significance that was present with Adam and Eve in the garden. Right? See, he sees more than just profit. He sees meaning. He sees significance in profit. See, that's the problem. And the problem, so the issue there is this, is that he is looking at something other than God for his ultimate source of significance and meaning in life. And that is the danger. That's the danger of wealth. It's because we begin to deposit our hopes and our trust over things that were never meant to deliver on those hopes and on those promises. We give it the attention that only God deserves in our lives. And maybe you're here today, and that's not the case for you. Like, you haven't obsessed over wealth. You haven't looked at wealth as the garden of the Lord, but you have looked at romance as the garden of the Lord. You have looked at your kids as the garden of the Lord. You have looked at your image as the garden of the Lord, as something that will deliver on the expectations that only God can. And the problem with that is they will never deliver, because here's the problem with Lot, right? And the problem with us is he wanted the garden of the Lord without the Lord in the garden. He wanted the garden without the Lord in the garden. You can't have the garden of the Lord without the Lord. That's the truth of the matter. You cannot. Anything that you set your eyes on, anything that you set your hands to, that the Lord is not in it, will never be a garden. It will always become a desert. That's the truth. You know stories of people that have obsessed over wealth, that have obsessed over image, that have obsessed over other things, and they thought that those things were going to turn into gardens and satisfy them, the deepest joys of their heart, and it has turned their lives into miserable deserts. You know, C.S. Lewis had a quote that went along the lines of what I'm talking about here. He said this: aim at heaven, okay, here's the quote, aim at heaven, and you will get earth thrown in, and aim at earth, and you'll get neither. And that's what happens here with Lot. So Lot moves into this area where he believes he will find ultimate joy and satisfaction in life. He looks at it as the garden of the Lord. And more as he is there, he's moving out of the promises of God. See, his decision is informed by prophet. And he's not thinking about his uncle. He's not thinking about God. He's not trusting in the promises of God. So he's moving outside of the boundaries of the land of Canaan. And he ends up gaining into the city of Sodom. Remember that story? Where he ends up ruining his life and his family's life. Wherever the Lord is, there is flourishing, full flourishing of things. Wherever the Lord is not, you can only experience breakdown. And it will happen to you as it happened to Lot later on in the future. See, that is the danger of wealth. So here's the question: how can we avoid the dangers and the pitfalls of wealth and experience real wealth in our lives? And what I want to tell you here today has nothing to do with the circumstances around you. It doesn't matter the things that you're surrounded by, the possessions that you're surrounded by. Real wealth is a condition of the heart. You know, what does real wealth look like? Here's the first thing about real wealth. It looks like rest. Why did Abraham give Lot the opportunity to choose where he wanted to go? This is something radical, because back in those days, the patriarch chose. The oldest person in the clan made the choice and says, this is my place, I'm going to stay here, I'm going down to that valley, you find somewhere else to go, right? This is something countercultural. We originally read this and we think, oh, he was just being a nice man. No. He was being countercultural, because nobody back in those days did that. He had the opportunity to sit wherever he wanted. He was the 500-pound gorilla, okay? He could sit wherever he wanted. And yet he gives Lot the opportunity to choose. And he knew, by the way, that Lot would choose where he chose, ended up choosing, because Lot's decision was always informed by prophet. He was young and he was unwise, and he knew that. But he was able to afford Lot that decision, because he rested in God. He rested in the promises of God. He knew that God would continue to provide. He believed in the promises of God at that very moment. That land, as God allowed him to look around him, was going to be eventually his. He believed and he trusted in the promises of God. He rested in God. He was not worried over it. He was like, oh, if I let him choose, what's going to happen with my business tomorrow, you know? He was not thinking that way, because he trusted and he rested in God. Let me ask you something here. Why is it that we pursue wealth in life? It's because we're looking for rest, isn't it? You want to find rest in the sense that when you enter into a space, you want people's opinions to be favorable towards you. You don't want to be concerned or worried that people are thinking this and that about you. You want to have enough money so that you can dress yourself in a certain way, or show off to people some of the accomplishments in life. So every time that you're in a space, you want wealth so that people will respect you, so that they will love you. Right? You want wealth so that you would have some comfort to deal and to cope with the tragedies of this broken life in this broken world. You want something to numb the pain. Why do you and I seek wealth? Because we want a strong safety net for ourselves and for our kids in the future. Right? We're fending for ourselves. At the end of the day, we want rest. We want to know that if something bad happens in the future, I'm going to be taken care of. That my kids are going to be taken care of. We're looking for rest. But the problem is we're killing ourselves on the way towards it, to get it. And here's the promise of God. What if God could say to you, listen, let me tell you something. What if I could give you what your heart truly wants for? That rest that you're really looking for in wealth. Okay, what if I can give it to you without you killing yourself in the process? What if you could have the joy and the satisfaction that you're looking to extract from wealth? What if I can give that to you without you having to have these things? What if I can give you the ultimate end and the ultimate result? It's kind of like somebody saying to you, hey, you want to lose weight? What if I can just flick my finger here and make you lose 30 pounds without having to go through a diet? That's what God is saying. He says, what if I can give to you what your heart really longs for so that you don't have to kill yourself in the process? That's what real wealth looks like. It's ultimate rest in God, because when you have that, you don't care. Look at the decisions that now Abraham is making. See, because Abraham knows God. See, knowing God is real wealth. What is the decision that he's making? Abraham knows he can't have those three things at once. He can't have the relationship with God, the relationship with his nephew, and his wealth at the same time. He's got to compromise something. He could have said to Lot, hey, let's go elsewhere where, we have a vaster territory that we can inhabit, but then he would have been leaving the area that God had promised him. He would have come out of the promises of God. He would have had to forfeit his relationship with God if he had gone elsewhere. Had he said to his nephew, no, I'm going to take whatever area I want, he could have hurt the relationship with his nephew. And so he does what he does here because he puts God first, people second, and then his wealth and profit third, okay? And that's when you know someone really knows God and has real wealth in life, because they put God and people first and they use money. When you serve money, you end up using God and people, okay? And that's our problem. Because he puts God and people first, because he serves God and he serves his nephew, he uses the resources to enhance that relationship. It's never the other way around. So how do we find real wealth in life so that we avoid the pitfalls of wealth and we experience all that it's intended to give us truly, and we become a blessing to others? How do we do that? By looking at the ultimate, the better and truer Abraham. Thousands of years later, another son of Abraham would be brought up into a mountain, and he would be offered all of the possessions of the earth if he put God at the back of his list. But he refuses to put God at the back of his list. He refuses to put you and I at the back of his list. See, Jesus picks you ahead of his own wealth, ahead of his own power. He's stayed, he's committed, and that's how he honors the Father. And had Jesus put his power and his comfort and his security ahead of you and I, he would have never come down from heaven to earth. But because he did, because he made himself poor, as Paul says in Romans, we can be made wealthy in him. And the only way you will avoid the dangers and the pitfalls of wealth in life and use it and experience in a godly and healthy way is if you really understand what Jesus has done for you, and if you surrender, if you give all of your life to him, if you put him before anything else. That's what he's calling us to do here today. So will you pray with me?